So Lizzie, you're one of the founders of Tracks for Change. How did it all come about?
Hey Will, yeah, so Tracks for Change is a group of people who are really passionate about democracy. And one thing we realised was that young people in particular, they have a lot to say, but sometimes they don't feel like their voices are being heard, you know? So we wanted to think of a cool way to engage them in getting into the debate about society, particularly right now with, you know, Brexit coming up, with all these very important elections that are about to take place. We wanted to try and think of a way to get them engaged. And we're all quite passionate creatives in the team, and we figured that actually something to do with music would be fantastic. So Tracks for Change was born, and the idea to get people to write a song about what they'd like to see change might be a way to get them to be heard.
Yeah.
So Will, what made you want to get involved with Tracks for Change?
Well, for me, my music's always been kind of my main passion, really. I mean, I work in TV, as you know, but I only got into working in TV because I wanted to work in music. And I thought a good way to kind of break into that world would be to get a job on MTV or a show like T4 and start interviewing bands and musicians, and I've been very lucky to be able to do that. So a chance to combine kind of my main passion, music, with something else that, you know, is very important to me, and that is democracy. It seemed like an amazing, it was just a no-brainer, really, you know? And I think, you know, some of the stuff you've been saying is so important. You know, democracy is this amazing, precious thing that we have it. It's a privilege, you know, and it is a right, but it's a right that if you take it for granted, it loses its meaning. And I think the more people can engage, you know, in politics in any way, you know, whether that's through voting or whether it's through activism, which is a really important part of democracy. You know, people should, you know, I'm all for protest. You know, if people feel that they need to make a change or that they need to make their voices heard, they should do that however they want to, because that is the society that we're lucky enough to live in, where they can do that. And you know, to do it through song, through music. What better way? So Lizzie, you're an amazing musician yourself, and you write songs. So how do you kind of get inspired? It's quite hard to get into the zone, I'd imagine, to actually put pen to paper and create something that, you know, means something to you personally. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, if I've written songs, I'd say I'm probably primarily a performing artist, and that means I get to work with a lot of songwriters and a lot of composers. What I tend to find a common theme of those that are really good at what they do is that they find their inner voice, so they find the thing that matters to them the most and they write about it. So I think, you know, for example, I do a lot of session work, and recently did a session with, you know, grime artist Lethal Bizzle, and he was collaborating with the very well-known David Arnold, film composer, and a fantastic singer called Sinead Hartnett. Three of them. It was a really interesting sort of combo, because we as the orchestra were, you know, on the track, and we were witnessing this really interesting fusion of, you know, grime meets classical meets soul. And what was cool was that because those three artists are so strong in their own voice, when you put them together, it was like a threefold powerful thing. So I mean, all these kind of things that I witnessed in my career as a violinist, you know, it makes me realise that, you know, it's possible for people to take inspiration from that and actually, you know, they all started somewhere as well. And I think this thing with Tracks for Change is we know there are people, we know there's the next Lethal out there, we know there's the next David Arnold, we know there's people out there, so we want to try and help them, but also for them to do it with a sort of purpose. You know, I also think that these days everything is perhaps a little bit more self-orientated with music and kind of being known and recognised, and I think what we think is cool is to try and remind people that actually it's really nice to also have a sort of cause and a care, as well as being a great musician. It'd be great if they have that with the cause and the care, so it's like matching the two things together, really.
So when people are entering this competition and they're sitting down with a blank piece of paper, what would your advice be to them to kind of shape the raw idea? Let's say they know they want to write something about gender inequality. What would be your one piece of advice to help them get started? What should they focus on, or what should they forget? And because you can get bogged down in worrying or overanalyzing things, I would imagine. What would be your one piece of advice?
I would say, you know, you pick the theme that you perhaps feel most passionate about. It might be that you're passionate about one theme, And if it's that, then start with the structure of the song. So normally a song will have a verse and a chorus, and then obviously you might have a bridge section as well. So the simplest thing to do is to figure out, maybe 2 or 3 verses with the chorus following, and then you can have a bridge section. So basically you've got these sections, and I think the chorus perhaps is the thing in a way to concentrate on, because that's sort of the thing that's repeated. So I would say, every songwriter has a different method, Will, and some people would only be able to start with the lyrics, some would be able to start with the music, but I would maybe advise that because this is very much focused on messaging and what we want to hear people say, I would start with the lyrics there, and I'd start, by constructing them.
Start with the lyrics in the chorus.
Why not? I mean, I think if the chorus is the thing that's repeated, that's essentially the thing that is the most powerful. And, we were talking today about fantastic musicians who, tragically, we've lost in 2016, we've lost a lot of great heroes of music. Prince today being one of them, David Bowie, all these great guys who contributed so much towards, inspiring change. I would go so far as to say those guys were total change makers in their musical directions and their musical output. So, if you're a young person who wants to write a song about something that you care about, start with what you care about, and actually start simple and try to make the issue you care about come out in lines, in simple lines that can be translated and that you feel that you're passionate enough about to perform,
So why do you think it is that young people today feel so disengaged in politics? Because, for me personally, I've done a bit of work with sort of encouraging young people to vote at the previous general election. And I think one of the things that I heard time and time again when I went out and was speaking to young people was, why should I vote for any of these people because they don't represent me?
Yeah.
So anyone I vote for will be a wasted vote. If I vote for one of the main parties, either they're going to win anyway, so who cares, or they're not going to, my vote isn't going to make them actually get in, and actually change stuff. I think part of the challenge is getting people to understand that isn't necessarily the case. Every vote that you put, every time a voter marks that ballot paper, they are expressing their opinion. And each of those opinions are counted and are added up.
Oh, yeah.
So if people vote for a fringe party, maybe that fringe party won't get representation in Parliament, but if 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 young people vote for the same fringe party, then the main parties know that if they want to win that 300,000 votes, which could swing it for them in a bigger election, they need to start addressing those issues.
Exactly,
But from your point of view, why do you think young people feel so disenfranchised?
I think you make a great point there. I think why they feel disenfranchised isn't difficult to answer, because I think you've covered the fact that I think a lot of parties these days, there's a slightly sort of similar demographic of people that we can vote for, where a lot of those people potentially aren't representing everybody in the country. What I would say though is that, as you quite rightly said, if that means that young people feel, well, what's the point? Well, I would say, think about how far it's taken us in history to get to this point where we are even able to have a voice, and I think we're very lucky to live in a democracy where we're able to vote, man, woman, from 18 upwards, anyone can vote who's registered as a UK citizen here. And I would say, think about what it was like 100 years ago when women couldn't even vote, or you had massive problems that were much worse than they are now in terms of inequality and stigma and all those things. So I would say that it's important to think of those things when moving forward, but I also think that change doesn't come quickly in society, but it can come quickly with music.
Yes.
So what I would say with music, and that's another reason why we put these things together, if you think about people like Prince and Bowie, there was a couple of moments in history where, a song like Purple Rain, that changed history really. That's a song that will forever be in the canon of musical hits and will mean so much to so many people around the world. Now, Prince wasn't a politician, but one could argue he was, more important and more universal, obviously, because he change made for everybody. And so I think music has got that power to shift and change someone's perspective within the blink of an eye, and therefore why not try and use it to kind of say what you want to see change in Parliament, in government.
Definitely. Well, it seems like that's for me the greatest thing about this competition. It's taking something which is democratic. We all have so much access to so much much music now
Yeah.
that if you've got a message, the best way to get it out and to get it heard
Yeah.
is to put it in song form. And I've always hankered after somebody in my generation to come
Yeah.
along with a voice and,
Yeah.
and write that protest song that I feel
too.
like my parents' generation
too.
had coming out of their ears
Oh,
with, you know,
I totally
Bob
agree.
Dylan and all
Yeah.
those sorts of people. And you don't hear that now. And I think,
No.
you know, now is the time with the internet, with social media, for people to
Yeah.
get out there,
Yeah.
write something down, put it to music, get it in
Yeah.
front of an audience like the
Totally.
crowd at Festival,
Totally.
and spread it across the world, which
I
you can now
totally
do with
agree.
social media.
Yeah.
Well done on founding Tracks for Change.
Oh, well, thanks, Will,
I
for
think it's
being
gonna
involved
be-
with us.
No, mate, it's great
a
fun.
team effort, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all of
yeah,
us in
yeah.
it together, you know.
Great.
But let's hope we get some great entries.
I think we will.
Yeah, nice one.